Hello guys, in this video we are going to go through 100 Microsoft AZ-900 Real Exam past questions, answers and their explanations. By going through this question with me and other videos I made on this, you should be able to score a very high grade in your AZ-900 exam. Now make sure you watch till the end. I'm going to give a link to download the PDF of these questions and answers. Let's dive in. Question 1. A company wants to try out some services which Azure is offering in public preview. Do the services in public preview in Azure come with an SLA, true or false? Now, from the documentation we can see over here, you can see previews are excluded from the service level agreement and limited warranty. This means the answer to this question is false. Question 2. Your company needs to deploy and manage several Azure web apps using the Azure App Service resource. Which of the following URL would you use to manage the Azure web apps? portal.microsoft.com, portal.azure.com, portal.azurewebsites.net, portal.azurewebsites.com. Now, the portal you can use to access Azure web apps is portal.azure.com, which is the second option. So our answer is B. Question 3. A company is planning to create several virtual machines in Azure. Which of the following is the right category to which the Azure virtual machines belong? Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, and function as a service. The correct answer is infrastructure as a service. IaaS constitutes the infrastructure that constitutes your Azure virtual machine. Other options are incorrect. Question 4. A company is planning to set up a solution in Azure. The solution would have the following key requirements: a simplified tool to build an intelligent artificial intelligence applications. Which of the following would be the best suited for this requirement? Azure Advisor, Azure Cognitive Service, Azure Application Insight, and Azure DevOps. Now, the tool that will be suitable for this requirement is Azure Cognitive Service. Azure Cognitive Service has an entire list of features that can be used to build artificial intelligence based applications, and this is a clear feature of this tool. On to the next question. A company needs to implement a solution in Azure. Below are the key requirements for this solution. No need for schema or index management. Ensure low latency access to data from around the world. Which of the following data solution would you consider for this requirement? You can see Azure SQL Database, Azure Cosmos Database, Azure SQL Data Warehouse, and SQL Server Stretch Database. Now, option A is incorrect since this is used to store normal table-like data. Option C is incorrect since this is used to build data warehouses. Option D is also incorrect since this is used to stretch, warm, dynamically and code transactional data from Microsoft SQL Servers 2016 to Microsoft Azure. And the answer is Azure Cosmos DB, option B. Azure Cosmos DB has no schema or index management and low latency, so it meets the needs of this company. Question 6. A company is planning to deploy Azure resources to a resource group. The company is planning to assign tags to the resource group. Would the resources in the resource group also inherit the same tags? True or false? Now, the resources in the resource group does not inherit the same tag, so this is false. Question 7. A company is planning to deploy Azure resources to a resource group. The company is planning to assign permission to the resource group. Would the resources in the resource group also inherit the same permission? Well, in this case, if you go to the access control section of the resources, you will see that the permissions are inherited from the resource group, so that is true. Question 8. A company is planning to host an application on a set of virtual machines in Azure. They want to ensure that the application recovers from a region-wide failure in Azure. Which of the following concept needs to be considered to fulfill this requirement? Option A is incorrect since this is used to scale in or scale out infrastructure. Option C is also incorrect since this is used from a customer perspective to make applications more agile. And option D is incorrect since this is used to make an application more flexible in its architecture based on users' demand. So the answer is B, disaster recovery. Question 9. An IT engineer needs to create a virtual machine in Azure. Currently, the IT engineer has a Windows desktop along with the Azure command line interface. Which of the following would allow the IT engineer to use the Azure command line interface? Choose two answers from the options given below. Now, we can either use PowerShell to access the command line or command prompt. You can't use File Manager or Print Explorer, and you can't use the control panel as well. You can launch the Azure command line from the command prompt and PowerShell. Question 10. A company is planning to use Azure Synapse Analytics for hosting their sales historical data. Which of the following is a feature of the Azure Synapse SQL architecture? High availability, scalability, disaster recovery, and virtualization. Now, option A and option C are incorrect because this is something you have to ensure with the capabilities available in Azure. Option D is also incorrect since you need to use other tools for handling the virtualization of data in a SQL data house. So the answer is B, scalability. Question 11. A company is planning to use Azure storage accounts. They have the following requirements. Storage account should automatically replicate data to the secondary region. Can configuring the read access geo-redundant storage account automatically replicate data to the secondary region? True or false? Well, in this case, this is true. For ensuring data is replicated to another region, you have to choose either geo-redundant storage or read access geo-redundant storage. Question 12. A company is planning to set up a solution in Azure. They have the following key requirements. Give the ability to process data from millions of sensors. Which of the below Azure service can be used for this purpose? Now, this is a clear feature of Azure IoT Hub. All other options are incorrect. Question 13. A company has several resources hosted in Azure. They want to have a comprehensive solution for collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry from the Azure cloud. Which of the following service would you use for this requirement? The answer to this question is Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor delivers a comprehensive solution for collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry from your cloud and on-premises environment. This helps you understand how your applications are performing and proactively identify issues affecting them. Question 14. A company is planning to deploy a web server and database server. You have to ensure that traffic restrictions are in place so that the database server can only communicate with the web server. Which of the following would you recommend for implementing these restrictions? Now, this would help if you use network security groups to allow or deny traffic within subnets. Option B is incorrect since this is used as a messaging system. Option C is incorrect since this is used to represent a VPN device in a site-to-site VPN connection, and option D is incorrect since this is normally used to connect networks via the internet. So the answer is network security groups. Question 15. A company wants to set up resources in Azure. They want a way to manage identities in Azure. Which of the following is used as an identity management solution in Azure? Azure AD, Azure Advisor, Azure Security Center, and Azure Monitor. Now, the answer to this question is Azure AD. This is the go-to to manage identities in Azure. Azure Advisor is incorrect since this is used to provide recommendations. Azure Security Center over here is used to protect resources in Azure, and Azure Monitor is used to monitor resources in Azure. Question 16. A company wants to deploy an artificial intelligence solution in Azure. The development team wants to have a tool in place that can be used to build, test, and deploy predictive analytics solutions. Which of the following should they use for this purpose? Now, to deploy artificial intelligence solution in Azure and also need a tool that will be used to build, test, and deploy a predictive analytics solution, what we are going to use for this is Azure Machine Learning Studio. This is used to deploy artificial intelligence solutions on Azure. Option A is incorrect since this is used to define workflow in Azure. Option C, Azure Batch, is used for batch processing applications, and option D, Azure App Services, is used to host web-based applications on Azure. Question 17. A company is planning to set up a solution in Azure. The solution would have the following key requirements. Gives the ability to host a big data analysis service for machine learning. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now, this is clearly a feature of Azure Databricks. Every other option is incorrect. Question 18. You're working on understanding all the key terms regarding international standards, data privacy, and data protection policies. Which of the following option is related to the statement given below? An organization that defines standards used by the United States government. Now, you can see Azure governments, GDPR, and ISO, NIST. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology at the U.S. Department of Commerce. NIST's cybersecurity framework helps businesses of all sizes better understand, manage, and reduce their cybersecurity risk and protect their network and data. So the answer is D. Question 19. This is similar to question 18. You're working on understanding all the key terms regarding international standards, data privacy, and data protection policies. Which of the following options is related to the statement given below? A European policy that regulates data privacy and data protection. Now, this is GDPR. The General Data Protection Regulation is one of the most wide-ranging piece of legislation passed by the EU in recent memories. It was introduced to standardize data protection law across the single market and give people in the growing digital economy greater control over how their personal information is used. So the answer is GDPR. The next question, question 20, is almost the same with question 18 and 19. You're working on understanding all the key terms regarding international standards, data privacy, and data protection policies. Which of the following options is related to the statement given below? A dedicated public cloud for federal and state agencies in the United States. Now, this is Azure government. This is a mission-critical cloud delivering breakthrough innovation to US customers. Only US federal, states, local, and tribal governments and their partners have access to this dedicated instance. Question 21. A company is currently planning to deploy resources to Azure. They want to have the ability to manage user access to resources across multiple subscriptions. Which of the following can help you achieve this requirement? Now, the correct answer is B, management groups. Management groups are containers for managing access across multiple Azure subscriptions. Resource group is good for grouping your resources together. Option C, Azure policies are valid only within one subscription. Option D, Azure App Service is used to host your web application. So the answer is B. Question 22. A company is planning to set up a solution in Azure. The solution would have the following key requirements. Provide a cloud service that helps transform data and provide valuable insights on the data itself. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now, this is a clear feature of Azure Data Lake Analytics. All the options are incorrect. Question 23. A company has a virtual machine created in their subscription. An application is installed on the virtual machine. You need to ensure that traffic can flow into the virtual machine on port 8080. Which of the following must you modify to make this work? Now, you have to modify the network security group. You have to add an inbound security rule. Since the right implementation is via network security groups, all other options here are incorrect. Question 24. A company is planning to set up a solution on the Azure platform. The solution has the following main key requirements. Provide a managed service that could be used to manage and scale container-based applications. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? The answer to this question is C, Azure Kubernetes. The Azure Kubernetes service can achieve this. Every other option here is incorrect. Question 25. A company is planning to move some of its on-premises resources to Azure. They have to provide a business justification for moving to Azure. They have to classify expenses as part of the business justification. Which category would the following expense come under? Software leasing. Is it going to fall under the primary expenditure, capital, secondary, or operating expenditure? These expenses comes under the operational expense category, so this is operating expenditure. Answer D. Question number 26. What are the additional dependent resources that an Azure virtual machine must have? Now, in this case, we are going to select two. Option A is an optional resource. A public IP is only needed when you want to move your virtual machine to be accessible via the internet. So this is not among our selected option. Option B is correct. This helps Azure virtual machine to securely communicate to other resources using private IP addresses. So option B is among our options. Option C is also not mandatory. An OS disk is required in every virtual machine. A data disk is optional in Azure virtual machine. It is used to increase the storage capacity of the virtual machine, so this is not mandatory. And option D is also correct. The network interface card NIC helps the virtual machine connect to the VNet. It is just like a SIM card that helps your mobile connect to the network service provider. So these two are mandatory and every other one is optional. Question 27. Which of the following storage account redundancy option keeps the copies of your data in 3 availability zones in the primary region and in a single data center in the secondary region for high availability? Is it the GRS, ZRS, LRS, or GZRS? Now, redundancy means the ability to protect your stored data by copying it at multiple locations in case of an outage. If the data resides within one boundary, then it is not fault tolerance. The data in your Azure storage account is always replicated in many places to ensure durability and high availability. The answer to this question is GeoZone redundant storage. The data is replicated in 3 availability zones in the primary region and in a single data center in the secondary region. Every other option is incorrect. A management group tree can support up to dash level of depth. The correct answer is 6, which is option C. A management group can support up to 6 levels of depth. A management group helps you to manage different subscriptions. It helps you to apply governance policies across your subscriptions as well. Question 29. Is the cool access tier a good option for long-term backup? Now you should know that the cool access tier has a time period of 30 days, so it can't exceed 30 days. So this is clearly not a good option for long-term backup. So the answer is no. The archive access tier has flexible latency requirement on the orders of our data in the archive tier should be stored for a minimum of 180 days. Question 31. Does the archive access tier set the storage account level? The archive access tier is the cheapest of all 3 access tiers. It is appropriate for data that is rarely accessed and stored for at least 180 days, for example, long-term backup. The archive access tier needs to be set at the blob level, so no. Question 31. What are the 2 benefits of cloud computing? Option A enables the rapid provisioning of resources, which is correct. And option D shifts capital expenditures to operating expenditures. Now, Azure allows you to build, deploy, and manage applications more quickly and easily without having to buy or maintain the underlying infrastructure. Azure provides flexibility between CapEx and OpEx. Capital expenditures generate benefits over a long period. These expenditures are generally non-recurring and result in the acquisition of permanent assets. Building an application could qualify as a capital expenditure. So option A and D are correct. Question 32. What is the feature of an Azure virtual network? Resource cost analysis, packet inspection, geo-redundancy, isolation and segmentation, which is correct. You can create multiple isolated virtual networks, so this is a feature of Azure Virtual Network. Question 33. Dash enables Azure resources to be deployed close to their users. Is it elasticity, geo-distribution, high availability, or scalability? Now the answer to this question is geo-distribution. Geo-distribution makes you deploy apps and data to regional data centers around the globe that is close to your customer to ensure best performance and low latency. Now this question is a little bit different. Match the cloud computing benefits to the appropriate descriptions. You can see disaster recovery, geo-distribution, high availability, and scalability. So we're going to match the description to the computing benefits. So increase the compute capacity of apps in the cloud. This goes with scalability. Provide a continuous user experience with no apparent downtime. This goes with high availability. And then ensure that users always have the best experience by deploying apps to all regions where the users are. This goes with geo-distribution. Question 35. Which cloud computing benefit provides continuous users access to a cloud-based application with minimal downtime? The answer to this question is high availability. High availability is the elimination of single points of failure to enable applications to continue to operate. Even if one of the IT components it depends on fails, it still continues to work. Question 36. You need to identify the type of failure for which an Azure availability zone can be used to protect access to Azure services. What should you identify? Is it a physical server failure, an Azure region failure, a storage failure, or an Azure data center failure? To answer this question, you need to understand what Azure Availability Zone is. Azure Availability Zone is a high availability offering that protects your applications and data from data center failures. So this is the answer D, an Azure data center failure. Question 37. You plan to extend your company's network to Azure. The network contains a VPN appliance that uses an IP address of 131.107.200.1. You need to create an Azure resource that defines the VPN appliance in Azure. Which Azure resource should you create? Now in this case, we're going to create a local network gateway. This is an object in Azure that represents your on-premise VPN device. You give the site a name by which Azure can refer to it, then specify the IP address on the on-premises VPN device to which you can create a connection. So this is the answer. Question 38. You plan to deploy several Azure virtual machines. You need to ensure that the services running on the virtual machines are available if a single data center fails. Solution. You deploy the virtual machines to 2 or more resource groups. Does this meet the goal? Now, a resource group is a logical container for Azure resources. When you create a resource group, you specify locations to create the resource group in. However, when you create a virtual machine and place it in the resource group, the virtual machine can still be in a different location. Therefore, creating multiple resource groups, even if they are in separate data centers, does not ensure that the service running on the virtual machines are available if a single data center fails, so no. Question 39. This is similar to our last question. You plan to deploy several Azure virtual machines. You need to ensure that the services running on the virtual machines are available if a single data center fails. Solution. You deploy the virtual machines to a scale set. Does this meet the goal? Well, no. The solution does not specify that the scale sets will be configured across multiple data centers, so this solution does not meet the goal. So the answer is no, B. Question 40. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. An Azure subscription can be associated to multiple Azure Active Directories tenants. Is this statement correct or not? Well, no. An Azure AD tenant can have multiple subscriptions, but an Azure subscription can only be associated with one Azure AD tenant. So this statement is not correct. Second statement, you can change the Azure Active Directory tenants to which an Azure subscription is associated. And yes, this statement is correct. And the last statement, when an Azure subscription expires, the associated Azure Active Directory tenant is deleted automatically. Well, this statement is not correct. If your subscription expires, you lose access to all the other resources associated with the subscription. However, the Azure AD directory remains in Azure. You can associate and manage the directory using a different Azure subscription. Question 41. Resource group provides organizations with the ability to manage the compliance of Azure resources across multiple subscriptions. Now, you have to review the underlined line. If it makes the statement correct, select no changes needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. This is the statement. Resource groups provides organizations with the ability to manage the compliance of Azure resources across multiple subscriptions. Is this statement correct? Well, no. And what makes this statement correct is Azure policies. Azure policies provides organizations with the ability to manage the compliance of Azure resources across multiple subscriptions. So option C is correct. Question 42. Your company plans to migrate to Azure. The company has several departments. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by a department administrator. What are the two possible techniques to segment Azure for these departments? Is it the multiple subscription, multiple Azure Active Directory, multiple regions, or multiple resource group? Now the answer is multiple subscriptions and multiple resource groups. An Azure subscription is a container for Azure resources. It is also a boundary for permissions to resources and for billing. You can change monthly for all resources in subscription. A single Azure tenant can contain multiple Azure subscriptions. Also, a resource group is a container that holds related resources for an Azure solution. The resource group can include all the resources for the solution or only the resources that you want to manage as a group. So, option A and option D is correct. Question 43. For each of the statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. The first statement says, a single Microsoft account can be used to manage multiple Azure subscriptions. And this is correct, yes. You can use the same account to manage multiple subscriptions. You can create an additional subscription for your account in the Azure portal. You can use the same account to manage multiple subscriptions. Second statement, two Azure subscriptions can be merged into a single subscription. Well, this is not correct. You can't merge two subscriptions into a single subscription. However, you can move some Azure resources from one subscription to another, so this is not correct. And the last statement, a company can use resources from multiple subscriptions, and this statement is correct. A company can have multiple subscriptions and store resources in different subscriptions. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Okay, you have several virtual machines in an Azure subscription. You create a new subscription. The virtual machines cannot be moved to the new subscription. That's the first statement. The virtual machines can be moved to the new subscription. Second statement. The virtual machines can be moved to the new subscription only if they are all in the same resource group, or the virtual machines can be moved to the new subscription only if they run Windows Server 2016. Well, you can move the virtual machine and its associated resources to a different subscription by using the Azure portal. So the answer here is the second statement, which states the virtual machine can be moved to the new subscription. Moving between subscriptions can be very handy if you originally created a virtual machine in a personal subscription and now you want to move it to your company's subscription to continue your work. You don't need to start the virtual machine in order to move it, and it should continue to run during the move. Question 45. You have an Azure environment that contains multiple Azure virtual machines. You plan to implement a solution that enables the client's computers on your on-premises network to communicate to the Azure virtual machines. You need to recommend which Azure resources must be created for the planned solution. Which two resources should you include in the recommendation? Well, in this case, a virtual network gateway and a gateway subnet. To implement a solution that enables the client's computers on your on-premises network to communicate to the Azure virtual machines, you need to configure a VPN, which is a virtual private network, to connect the on-premises network to the Azure virtual network. The Azure VPN device is known as the virtual network gateway. The virtual network gateway needs to be located in a dedicated subnet in the Azure virtual network. This dedicated subnet is known as a gateway subnet and must be named gateway subnet. So option A and E is correct. Question 46. You attempt to create several managed Microsoft SQL Server instances in an Azure environment and receive a message that you must increase the Azure subscription limit. What should you do to increase the limit? A. Create a service health alert. B. Upgrade your support plan. C. Modify an Azure policy or create a new support request. Well, in this case, you have to create a new support request stating what you want. Many Azure resources have quote limit. The purpose of the quote limit is to help you control your Azure costs. However, it is common to require an increase to the default rule. You can request a quote limit increase by opening a support request. Question 47. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. Okay, the first statement. Each Azure subscriptions can contain multiple account administrator. Well, no, this statement is not correct. You can assign service administrators and co-administrators in the Azure portal, but there can be only one account administrator. The second statement. Each Azure subscriptions can be managed by using a Microsoft account only. You need an Azure Active Directory account to manage a subscription, not a Microsoft account, so no, this statement is not correct. And the third statement, an Azure resource group contains multiple Azure subscriptions. No, resource group are logical containers for Azure resources. However, resource group do not contain subscriptions, so this statement is not correct. Question 48. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. Availability zone can be implemented in all Azure regions. Is that true? No. Not all Azure regions support availability zone, so this is not correct. The second statement, only virtual machines that runs Windows Server can be created in availability zone. No. Availability zone can be used with many Azure services, not just virtual machines, so this statement is not correct. And the last statement, availability zones are used to replicate data and applications to multiple regions, and this is not correct as well. Availability zones are unique physical locations within a single Azure region. Question 49. You plan to create an Azure virtual machine. You need to identify which storage service must be used to store the unmanaged data disks of the virtual machine. Which should you identify? Well, in this case, you identify the containers. Azure containers are the backbone of the virtual disk platform for Azure IaaS. Both Azure OS and data disks are implemented as virtual disks, where data is durably persisted in the Azure storage platform and then delivered to the virtual machines for maximum performance. So clearly we use containers for this. And the last question over here, your company plans to move several servers to Azure. The company compliance policy states that a server named Fin server must be on a separate network. You are evaluating which Azure service can be used to meet the compliance policy requirement. Which Azure solution should you recommend? Well, the answer to this question is B. A virtual network for Fin server and another virtual network for all other services. Networks in Azure are known as virtual networks. A virtual network can have multiple IP addresses, spaces, and multiple subnets. The question states that Fin server must be on a separate network segment. The only way to separate Fin server from the other servers in networking term is to place the server in a different virtual network to the other servers. So we are done with answering 50 questions and their solutions. If you watched to this moment, first give this video a thumbs up, and then you can drop your comment on how you feel about this exam. After writing your exam, make sure you come back to the comment section and share with us how many points you scored. To download the PDF of these questions, answers and their solutions, check the description of this video. I already uploaded a PDF you can download and then study yourself. If this video was helpful, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on your post notification. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.